Hello class and welcome to today's lesson as a follow-up to last lesson on imperialism, scramble for Africa, and partition of India. Today what we're going to do is formulate compelling and supporting questions after evaluating some very cool primary sources. We're going to look at the author's point of view, and you're also going to have a chance to apply your historical knowledge and through the context of what was happening during imperialism while these political cartoons were drawn. Next, you will examine and evaluate the issues of unity and diversity throughout world history by looking at the legacy of Gandhi. It's a really cool activity and lesson for you today. So welcome. Let's take a look at our agenda. First, we're going to watch a video, Crash Course on Imperialism. This will give you a chance to review your notes from last class. Next, you will apply some of your knowledge by analyzing some imperialism political cartoons. And last, you will do a reading and take a quick check-in quiz on the legacy of Gandhi. Let's get started. So first, we're going to pull up a crash course. Please open up to your notes. Perhaps you have them in a notebook or maybe you have them online. Read and review your imperialism notes from last class, Scramble for Africa. Take new notes as you watch the video to reinforce the topics of your notes that you hear in the video. This link is provided in Schoology. Please be sure to turn on the closed caption and pause the video as needed so you can take enough notes that help you to really comprehend and review the material on imperialism from last lesson. Finally, at the end of the video, please write down 3 questions you may have and you may think about during the video. For example, how are human rights respected and defended in today's world? Because we know that that's the biggest topic here with imperialism and colonialism, is that countries really did not respect the natural rights of the citizens, and dominant countries took over weaker countries just for the sake of their feelings of social Darwinism. And so we really want to look at the human rights aspect and how is it respected in today's world? In other words, what can we learn about history? So there you go. You're going to write down 3 questions you may have after the video. At this point, I would give the students 15 minutes to review the video and to be able to review their notes. Okay, class, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that video. Next on our agenda is to do our political cartoon analysis. Let's apply some of this knowledge that we've been learning from imperialism. Our learning target is to formulate compelling and supporting questions. I hope you created some great questions. I look forward to reading about those from the review video. But now what we're going to do is think about questioning after we now evaluate a primary source. We're going to look for point of view and historical context. So in this activity, you will be looking at a few political cartoons from imperialism and completing a worksheet on what do you see, think, and wonder. Please pull up this activity in Schoology at this time. It looks like this. Here is your worksheet. What do you see, think, and wonder? And here are the cartoons. Let's open a few tabs with those activities in front of you. And let's do the first one together. I would now give the students enough time to be able to pull this up, or perhaps ask them to pause the video if they were doing this asynchronously. Let's do the first one together. Okay, students, what do we see? I've posted a Jamboard for you. Could you please enter the Jamboard and tell me what do you see? I would give students time to respond to the Jamboard. If this is a synchronous lesson, I could see their progress. If it's an asynchronous lesson, I would use a Google Doc or a spreadsheet for students to brainstorm here, and then I could take their results and put them into this, the follow-up example. And now I will direct students to say, what do you think? Okay, what you think here is an example of how does this connect to imperialism, and is this right or wrong? Put some valuation on these political cartoons. And then what do you wonder? These are questions that you would wonder about that are consequences to the actions shown here. So let's take a look at this together. In this political cartoon, here are some great answers I've seen from students. What do we see? One student said, I see imperialist European powers of the late 19th century, great historical context. They're Germany and Belgium, great examples. They are carving countries of Africa, like taking their choice as if it's a piece of cake at a party. Really good example of historical context. Thank you. Next, what do you think? Be compelling. This means like think about right and wrong. Think about connections that help us make decisions and evaluations of the right and wrongs of history. So for example, it's a human rights issue that Africa is not represented at this table. Awesome. What do you think? Very compelling. And then what do you wonder? Here's a few examples of what you may wonder that I've received from students. What allowed this type of colonial behavior and entitlement by the countries at the table? Good one. What was the author's point of view towards each country in the image? Oh, I love that because that point of view hits our learning target. And then why did the author choose the imagery of the cake and table for the Berlin Conference? Really great question that really gets into that point of view of the author. So as you can see from this example, please feel free to write that into your first box for your worksheet as a guide. Notice how the historical context, compelling thinking thoughts, and point of view are all represented to help really demonstrate that you know the learning targets of this lesson. I would now give students a chance to be able to do this work on your own through a you-do format. Next in the lesson, as I bring students back together, we bring the lesson into our agenda item number 3. All right, students, we have now reviewed our information using our imperialism video. We have done political cartoon analysis where you demonstrate your knowledge of using primary sources for point of view and historical context. And now I'd like you to examine and evaluate unity and diversity throughout world history. The reason we study history and why I love studying imperialism is because this period of history can teach us so much about inspirational historical figures like Gandhi. We are going to read this article about one of the legacies of Gandhi, where he really was able to inspire many people in India and unify people in India to be able to gain Indian independence from Britain in the 40s and in the 50s. So we are going to read this article, underlining main ideas, circling keywords, making notes in the margin, such as connecting questions and definitions. So really mark up that article. This could be done on paper. This could also be done electronically on the article using markup tools. After you read and annotate that article, take the 5-question quiz assessment that is available for you in Schoology so I can see how you did and how your reading comprehension is. And remember, our learning target is to examine and evaluate issues of unity and diversity throughout the world. So let's take that next step. After we do the article and do the check-in quiz successfully, it's now time for you to write a paragraph response to complete this lesson. That's item number 3. Use evidence from the reading and our previous studies to support your claim. So here I'm looking for you to use historical examples that you can connect after you read the case study on Gandhi and his inspirational story. How can you connect that idea of unity and unifying and that diversity within India to other examples that we've learned about, such as the American Revolution, U.S. Civil Rights Movement, or the Arab Spring, etc.? As you are doing your writing for step number 3, your writing rubric is available for you in Schoology so that you can independently gauge your work, do a self-assessment before you submit, and I'll be using this rubric to give you individualized feedback so that if you do this and you would like to do revisions for a score improvement, you may do so at that time. Okay, this concludes the teacher portion of the lesson. Thank you so much for watching, and here's our lesson citations to be able to acknowledge the wonderful sources used today. And I'd also like to take a few minutes to just discuss what accommodations and modifications would be made on this lesson. So first and foremost, I appreciate that the state report was included in this lesson so that I could evaluate the size and the composition of this class and really know the students' needs. And I would offer extended time for a lot of the non-proficient students based on that result. I do believe that this warrants my individual attention to allowing students to individually extend the learning time as needed, and in that time maybe get individual support from me one-on-one through online tutorial support or online maybe Zoom calls or some type of individual attention in that way. But specifically, how would I modify this lesson? First, it's evident in the video where students can watch that independently, use the closed captioning, and pause the video as needed. A second modification is within the political cartoons, paring down the amount of political cartoons the students would do from having to do 4 total to 2. I would talk to students individually about those that require accommodations for that. Specifically, Luther, Jaden, and Sarah may be good candidates for paring this down so that instead of extended time, we just shortened how much they are doing so that they can accomplish and they can show proficiency in our learning targets, but just having doing 2 instead of 4. And then next is, and most importantly, is when assigning a reading for the students, I like using Scholastic Reader because I can examine the Lexile levels of the different readings that are included there. This Legacy of Gandhi comes from a Scholastic Reading Lexile reader of about 730 at a basic level, but I have 2 other versions of the reading I can use based on the guidance of Scholastic. So I can assign out the individual copies to the students that need it, who are not proficient. Specifically, Luther, Jaden, and Sarah need reading support. So I would assign a lower Lexile number. After getting to know my students and seeing what they can do and accomplish, I will encourage them to read at higher levels, getting the same content. The check-in quiz that they take, the formative assessment there, is aligned to any of those Lexile reading levels. So I can gauge reading comprehension from that quiz, regardless of the reading that the students were assigned. Next, I would like to address how I may encourage students to go beyond in their thinking and to really accelerate their thinking or extend their learning. And with this particular activity, I would love to see students take an opportunity to create a political cartoon of their own and be able to demonstrate the topics and concepts that were involved in the political cartoons actually that they did for the activity, but create their own imagery and then analyze their own work for an extension and activity that takes it a little more into depth. Thank you so much for watching today. I've enjoyed preparing this lesson for Stride. I look forward to further conversations about my potential candidacy as a teacher with your organization.